Hello, this is Sonia here with a Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. So today is Tuesday, and that means it's Tunisian Tuesday. So we are going to be doing a stitch pattern. I am using my F hook or 3.75 millimeter hook. And I have already gotten started here with our setup row for this stitch pattern. And I will show you how to do the setup row if you don't know on an I have lots of Tunisian videos, so I'm just going to show some old footage on how to get started with setup rows. And lots of Tunisian patterns do have a setup row, and then after this first row here, then the pattern gets started. But to do this stitch pattern, you're going to want to chain a multiple of 11 plus 6. So what I ended up doing was I chained 39 for this, and I don't have a rubber band at the end of my hook. I'm going to make it work. So I'm going to switch over to that other footage, and then I will meet you back. So we're going to be working in the back bump of the chain. That's how I prefer when doing Tunisian crochet. And in the second bump from our hook, we're going to pull up a loop. This is our setup row for row 1. And we're just going to go across pulling up loops. So now we're going to work off our stitches. So this is our return pass. So we did our forward pass and then the return pass. So we're going to yarn over, pull through the 1, and then yarn over, pull through the 2 for the rest of the row. And again, this is our setup row. Okay, so here is our first row for our stitch pattern that we're doing. So let's get ready for row 2. So row 2, our first stitch in that first bar, we're going to work a purl stitch. So we're placing that yarn in front, inserting our hook in the bar, and working that purl. And now we are going to work a Tunisian simple stitch decrease or together stitch. So we're going to insert our hook in both of the next 2 bars like that and work a Tunisian simple. And if you are not familiar with Tunisian crochet, I have a whole playlist that I will put in the description box that goes over the basics. Okay, so we've worked that simple. So now we're going to put a stitch back on. So we're doing what I call this a Tunisian running chain stitch. I don't know what the actual name of it is. It's just a stitch that I came up with. Again, I've done some other stitch patterns with this. I don't claim to have invented this stitch at all. I just hadn't seen it, and it needed a name. So we need to put this stitch back on. So what I like to do is yarn over purlwise is what I call it. So the yarn is in front, and then I wrap that yarn around and bring it back in front. So our next stitch, so now we put the stitch back on, we're going to work another purl stitch. And we're going to keep working purl stitches. We're going to work 9 of them. So this is stitch 1, and then we need to work 8 more purl stitches. Okay, and I don't think we have our 9 purl stitches. I don't think I told you the type of yarn I'm using. This is paint box yarn, simply DK, so it's DK weight yarn. So I'm sorry I didn't mention that, but you can certainly use a variety of hook sizes or yarn for this particular stitch pattern. Okay, so we should have 9. Yep, and now we're going to work another Tunisian running chain stitch. So we're working Tunisian simple in over those 2 stitches. So a Tunisian decrease. Now we need to put that stitch back on. So to purl, yarn over purlwise, and now we're going to work 9 purl stitches again. And you're going to repeat that across. So the repeat is the purl, the Tunisian simple together, yarn over purlwise, and then you're going to purl 9 stitches, and then you're just going to repeat that across. So now I'm working my Tunisian simple together stitch, or the running chain stitch, and then yarning over purlwise and working my 9 purl stitches. Okay, so I've worked my 9 purl stitches. So I'm at the end of my row. So we do have 4 stitches left. So what we need to do is we need to work the Tunisian running chain. So Tunisian simple in the next 2. So you insert your hook in the next 2 to work the Tunisian simple decrease. I feel like I'm picking up extra loops here with this yarn. Alright, and now we're going to put the yarn back on. So yarn over purlwise, yarn in front, wrap it around, bring it back. So we have to work a purl stitch in our second to our last stitch, and then our very last stitch is the knit stitch that I like to work. Gives a clean edge. So if you look at that, it looks like a chain. You insert your hook in that center of that chain and work that knit stitch. So now I have 39 loops back on my hook here. So now we are going to work these off, and we're going to work them off a little bit differently than we normally do with when we do the return pass. So Tunisian's always worked in 2 parts. You have your forward pass where you're putting your stitches on, then you have your return pass where you take the stitches off, and that completes 1 row. So to begin with this guy, we're going to yarn over, pull through 1 stitch, yarn over, and we're going to pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So we're yarning over, pulling through 2 from that purl stitch we made, the running chain stitch. Now we're at our set of 9 purl stitches. So when you get to that set of 9, you're going to yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, so we've yarned over, pulled through 2 for the purl stitch, the one part of the running chain, the other part, and the purl chain that's next to the running chain stitch. So the running chain always has a purl stitch next to it. So now we are going to chain 3. So this is where it gets a little different than a normal return pass. So we're chaining 3. So now we're going to yarn over, we're going to pull through 8 loops at once. So it can get a little crazy, so just take your time, and I usually like to do it like this. So I've yarned over and I just kind of count by 2s. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now after we've pulled through those 8 loops, we're going to chain 3. So now we're back to our running chain section. So if you look at it, here's the purl, and then the running chain stitch, and then the purl. So we're going to yarn over, pull through 2 for that group of stitches. So we're yarning over, pulling through 2, so that's that purl. Yarn over, pull through 2, that's the first half of the running chain stitch. Yarn over, pull through 2, the second half. Yarn over, pull through 2, the purl stitch next to the running chain. So now we're going to chain 3 again. And we're going to pull through those 8 stitches. So again, I just like to count by 2. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we chain 3. So you don't want to rip through it because then they might pop off and that would be annoying. Alright, so now we're back to that running chain section. So yarn over, pull through 2 for that purl stitch. Yarn over, pull through 2 for the first half of the running chain. Pull through 2 for the second half. Pull through 2 for the next purl stitch. And now we're back to that pulling through the 8. So we're going to chain 3 first. Sorry I had to pause. Somehow my yarn got wrapped around my tripod, which I'm not sure how that happened, but you know, weird stuff happens. So we've chained 3. Now we're going to pull through that 8 again. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So now we're just going to chain 3. And then we'll just finish up the row by yarning over, pulling through 2 for the rest of the row. So I'm at the end here. So there is row 2. So we've created some pretty shell stitches here. All right, so let's get going for row 3. So row 3, we're working our purl stitch. And we're going to work that running chain, so working that Tunisian simple decrease, and then putting that loop back on and working the purl stitch. So now we're going to work Tunisian simple, but we're going to be working in this chain here. So we're going to pull up 3 loops. You can work in your chain however you like. So there's 1, 2, 3. So we've just pulled up 3 loops. So now we're going to work in the center of the shell. You can see that loop right there. You can insert your hook in there and just pull up the loop. So we've got 4. So the shell's made up of 7 stitches. All right, and now we're going to go into the chain again and pull up 3 loops, and then we have our 7 stitches back on. Because at the end of this row, we are still going to end up with 39 loops on our hook. So we've got those 7 stitches that make up this shell on our hook. So now we're to our running chain section where we work that Tunisian purl stitch. And this stitch pattern is nice because it will lay flat because there's lots of purl stitches in it. So then we work our Tunisian simple decrease, put the loop back on, yarn over purlwise, and we work that purl stitch. And now we're back to our chain, so we're going to pull up 3 loops, which is going to be it's going to be a shell again. And now we work Tunisian simple in that center of that shell, and we pull up 3 loops from our chain. And now we work our Tunisian purl stitch. Sometimes that purl can hide after you've pulled up from the chain, but it's there, so you just want to be mindful of that, that you don't miss it. So I would say this stitch pattern is definitely probably for the more experienced Tunisian crocheters. So if you're brand new with Tunisian crochet, this might be a little challenging for you. But if you've done, you know, a little bit of Tunisian crochet, you should be fine. I mean, it's nothing super complicated, but you know, you just need to be familiar with what the stitches look like, you know, that kind of stuff, which I find to be important for any type of crochet that you're doing. It's real. I always call it reading your work. I just find that to be really important. You want to know, you know, what is a purl stitch made up of? What is the simple stitch made up of? Because that will just help you to be more successful with your crocheting or knitting, whatever type of craft you're doing. You know, so that if you make a mistake or you're not sure how things are going, you can say, hey, you can see, if you're reading your work, you can see, hey, this isn't right. I've got too many stitches, not enough, or I didn't do it correctly, or I missed a stitch. All right, so we're at the end of this row. I'm working that Tunisian knit stitch, and that looks like a chain there at the end. And I will have 39 stitches on my hook. So for row 3 for this row, you're just going to yarn over, pull through 1 stitch, and yarn over, pull through 2 for the rest of the row, just like how we did for row 1. And this is, I would say, the majority of Tunisian crochet stitch patterns are like this, but occasionally it's a little bit different, like we did for row 2. Okay, so there is row 3. So what we're going to do is we're just going to repeat rows 2 and 3 for however long we want our swatch, and we are going to end on a row 2, and then I'll show you how I like to bind this guy off. So I'm going to work a whole bunch more rows so we can really see the stitch pattern, because you can't really see it too well right now, but once we got a couple rows under our belt, the stitch pattern really starts to pop out. So I'm going to keep going. So again, just repeat rows 2 and 3 and then end on a row 2, and I will meet you back. Okay, so here we go. I ended up working 12 rows here, and I think it's a really pretty stitch pattern. I think it would be really nice for like a shawl, a blanket, a scarf, you know, something like that. So you're probably wondering how to bind this guy off. So I ended on a row 2 here. So what we're going to do is we're going to work the bind off. So this is a purl stitch here. We're going to bind off in purl. So I got my yarn in front, and where's that stitch? It was hiding. There we go. And when you're binding off, you just want to make sure that you don't get too tight with your stitches. So I'm just pulling through. So you're basically working a slip stitch. So now we're going to bind off this stitch here. So we're going to work Tunisian simple bind off, Tunisian simple bind off in the next one. So now we are at our purl stitch right here. So we're going to bind off in purl. And now we're at our chain. So we're going to go insert our hook into that first chain there, pull up a loop, and then just work the bind off. And we're going to do that 2 more times. So don't overthink it with the bind off. So you'll bind off in purl in the purl stitches, and bind off Tunisian. When you get to the Tunisian simple stitch, just bind off, inserting your hook Tunisian simple. And now we're going to go into that center of that shell and work our bind off. And now we have our other 3 chains. So we're just pulling up loops like we've been doing with the chain and then binding it off. So now I'm back to that purl stitch, binding it off. So I'm going to keep going here. Now you could definitely end on a row 3 if you wanted to. You know, it's up to you however you want to bind off. I just wanted to do it with a row 2 just to see how it looks, but I'm going to keep going here, finishing up, and I will meet you back. Okay, so I'm at my last stitch here, so we're going to do the bind off in knit. So work that Tunisian knit and then bind off. So there we go, and as you can see, this one lays nice and flat because it has lots of purl stitches in there. And again, I think it's a really pretty stitch. It has shells, and shell stitches, whether they're Tunisian crochet or regular crochet, are some of my very favorite stitches. I absolutely love shell stitches. I think they're so pretty. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.